Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming in this terrible weather. And we know you are true friends of Bar Graduate Center. I'm Mei Rado, Assistant Professor of History of Textiles and Dress here. On behalf of our director, Susan Weber, and the faculty, I would like to welcome you to this spring's Françoise and George Selz lecture on 18th and 19th century French decorative arts. I'm very honored to present tonight's speaker, Pascale Gorguet Ballesteros. Madame Ballesteros is a senior heritage curator at Palais Galliera, Museum of Fashion in the city of Paris, where since 1991 she has been responsible for the 18th century collections. She has curated many exhibitions, including À la mode, l'art de paraître au XVIIIe siècle, in 2021 and 2022 at the Musée des Beaux-Arts at Nantes et Dijon. Le XVIIIe siècle au goût du jour in 2011 at the Château de Versailles, and the Faste de cour et cérémonie royale in 2009, also at Versailles. Her next exhibition will examine women, travels, art, and fashion in the Enlightenment era. We very much look forward to that. Madame Ballesteros is also a teacher and researcher in the Department of Art History and Archaeology at the Sorbonne University, where she teaches fashion history and fashion materials. Welcome, Pascale.
So this is it okay? This is a topic of tonight. Thank you for coming and thank you for the invitation from the bar. Thank you, Mei, and thank you, Geoffrey. Is it? Yes, okay. So let's go in the subject. So once upon a time, on January 10th, 1907 in Paris, the Société de l'Histoire du Costume, so we say SHC, was founded. And the main objective was to create a Musée du Costume, a costume museum. In 2024, we can say that the core of the 18th century dress collection of the Palais Galliera, Fashion Museum of Paris, is constituted by a donation of the SHC, which is dated on December 31, 1920. So for all the people we are researching in our collection, each time you see 1920, it means that it is an item, a garment, or an accessory coming from the gift of the SHC. And in the 18th department, about 700 pieces upon about 1,660 are coming from this collection. So nearly half of the 18th century collection is coming from the SHC. The first printed bulletin of the SHC, dated on June 1907, states the objective of the society. So as you know now, to create a museum of costumes, but also saddlery and coaches, to spread the taste in matters of costume, archaeological studies, conservation, reconstruction of old costumes, storage for future time of samples of modern fashions, and conservation. Publication of a bulletin, formation of a library related to the history of costume, organization of exhibitions, organization of courses and conferences, and constitution of workrooms at the disposal of artists and researchers. As you see in this diagram, 49% of the members, fondators of the SHC were artists. And you can see that the other one are divided between politicians, industrials people, art markets, and writers, novelists, and so on. So among these fondators, 16 were painters and all involved in an important network of artistic sociability. The founder of the SHC and its president was Maurice Leloir, which is with painter, engraver, illustrator, drawer. He was also, he had this collection, we will talk about that. And he make advertisement, for instance, for the Marquise de Sévigné, who was a chocolate brand, and the shop where there was a very nice shop, Place de la Madeleine. So and others like Jean-Gustave Jacquet, Édouard de Taille, were also members of the Société des Aquarellistes Français. So you see on this diagram the members of which were common to the Société de l'Histoire du Costume and Société des Aquarellistes Français. And also some are members too of the Société des Pastellistes Français. So they were doing pastel. Most often, they all exhibited in the Parisian Gallery Georges Petit, which was 8 Rue de Selz in the 8th district. And also, of course, they exhibited at the Salon, which became Salon des Artistes Français in 1879. As a result, they became members of the Société des Artistes Français, who managed the Salon. And here you see a catalogue. I will talk more about this later, but you have to see the name of Georges Sorté is an interesting character person for the following story. So most of these painters have been educated at the École des Beaux-Arts by former academic painters. Jean-Gustave Jacquet, that we are going to speak about later, is student of William Boucquereau. Maurice Leloir has been very shortly to the Académie des Beaux-Arts because he was from an important dynasty of French painters, going back to Greuze. His grandfather was Alexandre-Marie Collin, an important Orientalist painter and illustrator of the first half of the 19th. His mother and his aunt were also important fashion illustrators. They were working for the best fashion magazines at the middle of the 19th century in Paris. So let's go first to Maurice Leloir. He did this kind of historic genre paintings. You know, he did a lot of this kind of historic genre where you have some 18th styled characters, you know, in nature, having love affair or being involved in nice discussions. And you see here there is a kind of nature alluding to the gardens of Versailles with the little statue of a Cupid. And here, this man has his stockings mended in the streets of Paris by this lady. So here we are going more into the subject, because you see these are two paintings from Leloir. One is the going out of the exit of the church of Saint Paul in the Marais, in the 4th district, and the seller of gloves, so probably a love affair between the young seller and the young man. And you recognize, of course, the coats, breeches, and the waistcoats that we have in our collection with the stamp of Maurice Leloir, and with an inventory number beginning by 1920. Here too, in this detail of this painting on the King's Passage, you can recognize the jacket which we have in our collection, and this jacket is not a French one, it is a Dutch jacket. And this painting, so sorry for the bad photo, I'm waiting for a new one. This painting is one of the most well-known painting of Leloir. It was like his masterpiece. It is it is representing the death of Manon Lescaut, and it is preserved here in New York in the Daesh Museum of Art. You see, it is quite a big painting compared to the others, which are smaller. And surprisingly, Leloir had for the died poor Manon, he chose to have for her a stay which is in our collection, but this is a stay for pregnant women, and you can see that it is open, you know, on both sides, so it can be enlarged when the lady is more and more. That's it. So now let's concentrate on Jean-Gustave Jacquet. And Jean-Gustave Jacquet died in July 1909. I will so just memorize this date because I will tell a lot about 1909. And Robert de Montesquieu, who was a dandy, a poet, and a writer, he was a close friend to Jean-Gustave Jacquet, and he wrote the preface of the auction catalogue, which followed the death of Gustave Jacquet. And he wrote, "I was about to set off when I received the announcement that my friend was dead. The great draftsman, the expert and charming painter, the master of satin and velvets, of brocades and trimmings, posed as garlands and festoons upon a family of the eternal feminine which he had created." So Jacquet made his debut at the Salon of 1865. He did a lot of portraits, and he portrayed ladies often dressed in an historicized way, most often in 18th century style. He also painted a lot of scènes de genre, and if his works are evocative of 16th and 17th, they're mostly evocative of the 18th. His studio has been published as a museum of antiques full of armors and costumes. You see in this magazine La Vie Moderne, Gustave Jean wrote, "On the furniture of different styles and periods are piled profusely costumes of all times. There is a curious collection of doublets from the 30 Years' War." So here you have two of his best portraits, which most well known. So the portrait de la Duchesse d'Uzès has been exhibited in the Salon des Artistes Français in 1886, and she is in a contemporary dress, probably on Amazon, because the Duchesse d'Uzès was reported as a sportswoman. She spent literally her life hound hunting, but she is also known as one of the women who were the first to have the driving license, and she is also recorded to be one of the first ticket because she drove too fast in the Bois de Boulogne, and she was, driving at 15 kilometers, so she got a ticket. And then you have this portrait, which is preserved in the Musée Magnin. It has been collected by Maurice Magnin, and the museum of his collection is in Dijon. And you see that this lady with this fan is dressed in a more historicized way and more in an empire style. So these are these scènes de genre. So we have la première arrivée, the first two who arrived on the hilltop, and this famous painting of which has been exhibited in the Salon of 1879 as is lost. We know only the painting through this engraving. There is also the minuet, which has been exhibited in 1890, and for us, a very important painting, La Bienvenue, the Welcome, at the Salon des Artistes Français of 1892. And as for the minuet, which is a very important painting for him, you can see that it is a kind of mixture of 18th clothes, 18th garments, 17th garments, 16th garments. It's kind of a melting pot of all these costumes. So in Les Annales politiques et littéraires, there was a big obituary when he died. Jacquet was quite well known. He had the Légion d'honneur. There were this kind of academic painters who were reputed and completely recognized by the French state. And so in this obituary, it is said, Gustave Jacquet seemed a contemporary of Watteau, Lancret, or Fragonard, rather than a contemporary of automobile and airplanes. He had a little of the grace of the great masters and the little masters of the 18th century, well, in fact, all the masters. And we can say that he saw the woman of today under the allure and finery of the beauties of the past. For 10 years, the noblest and most elegant women wanted to have their portraits done by Jacquet, and his artistic reputation reached its peak when he exhibited the minuet at the Salon of 1880. For the minuet had posed the flower of the aristocratic world. His slightest paintings were then sold in America at such prices that they made him forget Paris and the French amateur. And here, indeed, the Welcome, which was exhibited in the Salon in 1892, was exhibited 6 years later in the Brandeis Gallery in New York in 1898, bought by a private family, then gifted to the Art Institute of Chicago, then deaccessioned in 2007. And from this moment, we don't know, we lost the painting because it has been through another auction in 2017. So as for Gustave Jacquet, we have 3 auctions. In May 1904, the painter did an auction with his collection of ancient paintings, furniture, and ancient costumes. We have no catalogue. Then after his death, in 26th and 27th of November 1909, there was organized at the Galerie Georges Petit, expert Georges Sortet, were organized an auction with the painting, his own work. I mean, the paintings, the watercolors, the patterns, the drawings, which were in his workshop. And for our stories, most important is the catalogue of female, male, and children costumes, weapons and armories, and ancient textiles and musical instruments and other stuff. That this auction of his collection of costumes then happened in the 2 following days. So it was four days auction, can you believe? November 29 and 30th of 1909. So at the moment, 10 Galliera costumes or set of costumes are officially linked to Jacquet. How do we know? Because they have been mentioned by Leloir in his report of the 1909 auction in the Bulletin de la SHC of January 1910. The SHC bought a lot of pieces and at the auction of 1909, and Leloir made his report, so that is quite useful. Also because these items could have been mentioned by another collector, or also because we have nothing than an identification from his paintings. So first, the costumes bought by the Société de l'Histoire du Costume in Jacquet 1909 auction. So Leloir reported in the Bulletin of 1910, we were able to have for 400 francs the little dress for an actor or dancer with the upper part in green velvet embroidered with gold and relief, which appeared in room 113 of our exhibition. So this is alluding to the big exhibition the Société de l'Histoire du Costume made from May to October 1909 in the Musée des Arts Décoratifs. It was really a big event, and unfortunately the poor Jacquet died in July, so he didn't see the end of this exhibition. Again, this suit à la hussarde, the coat and the trouser, has been bought by the SHC in 1909 at the auction and is reported as this in the Bulletin of 1910. Then we have costumes bought at Jacquet's auction by Georges Sortet itself, because Georges Sortet was also a collector. He was expert and collector. And how do we know? We know because Georges Sortet left a note, which is surprisingly preserved in the archives of the Musée des Arts Décoratifs, related to the exhibition of 1909. There is a note of Georges Sortet stating that he bought this blue jacket and that the jacket went to the Société l'Histoire du Costume. But we also have the jacket on Jacquet painting. So this one, also this painting and this watercolor where you can identify the jacket. Then we come to the welcome. And on the welcome, there is this red dress that is in our collection. This red dress have been given to the SHC by the widow of Georges Sortet. So we have 2 dresses coming from the Georges Sortet provenance. Jacquet obviously loved this dress because you see here the lady is wearing this red dress on the balcony of the Hotel Crillon, but we have also a kind of ribambelle of portraits with this red dress. So we have now the provenance identified thanks to the paintings, and here there is this little cloak in velvet beautiful cloak with rich gilded silver ornaments, and we know this cloak is coming from Jacquet thanks to the painting. And just to say it now, because after I will forget anyway, so it has nothing to do with fashion. In fact, it is an Italian religious processional little cape. So also you see this little cape was worn by the lady who arrived first on the hilltop. This waistcoat for men, which had been altered, has been identified thanks to the painting of Jacquet, but we are lucky enough to have in the catalogue of the auction of the Jacquet paintings, his own paintings, this painting is reported, and this is how we know that it is Odette. So we have been able to match the pairs, the painting and the costume, and we have been thanks to the welcome, but also thanks to these paintings that I never saw on internet or whatever, just in the documentation of the Musée d'Orsay. We know that he also owned this beautiful jacket. So this quick review of Jacquet costumes in Galliera collection raises several points to consider. First, the conservation of these costumes. Then the 19th alterations, reconstructions, and reassembling that these costumes have been through. And then I can do maybe a joke, but only the French will understand, because apparently you don't have this advertisement in the USA. What else? When you say what else in France now, we answer Nespresso, because we have this advertisement with Georges Clooney, and they say what else? Nespresso. So what else for our story? What else? Doubts. So first, I will go quickly through the conservation of the costumes. So a lot of these costumes are from medium state to really bad state. They have been, most often they have been a lot worn. We have a lot of stains from sweat, and this acidity of the sweat has really destroyed, the undersleeves, a lot of parts of the costumes. What is also interesting is that we have been able to trace this kind of mendings you see here with these cross stitches on a lot of our costumes. So apparently, at the end of the 19th or in the 20th, there was a use of mending doing these stitches. Now the story is a bit more complicated, because of course this kind of mendings now, when you say, oh, there is something, this has something to see with the old collection and whatever. We in France, we are such a bureaucratic nation. So when you want to conserve a costume, you have to ask the allowance to the state. So you have to make a big file and go through a jury and explain to the jury what you want to do, how you're going to do, how you're going to conserve the thing and whatever. And when we realized that these mendings were historically of importance for the costumes, I explained this to the state jury, because sometimes you really have to conserve the costume and to take off all these mendings, because they are 120 years after, they are more damaging than something else. So we have to take them. And of course, the state jury say, oh, no, that's historical. You cannot take them away. So now we have the use to keep a little testimony of these cross stitches in a place of our costume, so that our colleagues from the state are pleased and we are still able to trace the history of the costume. And as for the alterations and the reconstruction, for this child coat, which belonged to Jacquet, bought at the 1909 auction, but the SHC, everything is normal. Then it is a child coat, but Leloir is stating that nevertheless, we must say that it is a men's suit retailed for a child at the very time. So that is shown by an examination of the seams, linings, and other details. Then they replace missing parts, they complete the costume, or sometimes they're reassembled. So here, Leloir is continuing his report of when he bought this theater ballet costume. He said, "We are going to reassemble this garment and put it on a mannequin for the museum." So indeed, the back is made of another green velvet. The embroidery is cut by some seams, so you can see that the embroidery has been made on purpose for the shape of this we say cuirasse, so this special costume for ballet or for theater. And but when they do chiefly with gold threads. When they do a drawing, a pattern for a special shape, normally they don't cut with the seams are not cutting the embroidery, and here it is cut. So we know it has been completed so that it can indeed have been put on a mannequin. And we have also galoons that can be 18th, but that can be also 19th, because we have theater costume in our collection. We have a department of theater costume, and we have the same galoons on 19th century theater costume. About the red dress, Maurice Leloir said in the Bulletin of 1910 that this dress was reconstituted. So they didn't buy, because you remember that it is the widow of Georges Sauté. We gave it to the SHC. Also, Maurice Leloir reported in his book Histoire du costume de l'Antiquité en 1914, he reported the dress as being a reconstitution. But when we conservate the dress in 2020, it appears that the reconstitution has not been as we at least understand now. It is a dress, it is the textile is 18th, most of the dress is 18th. We have some stitches using mercerized thread, buttons and front fasteners are not 18th, and they're probably 19th. So we think with the conservator who did the work that it is maybe a dismounted 18th century dress that has been reassembled at the 19th century, but the main dress is 18th century. And maybe at that time they did the pleats here, because for this we are not sure that the original had the pleats or not. So also they created costume to replace missing costume in the exhibitions. So here you have this mannequin and with this end of 16th century costume garment, and they did there was a big exhibition of 1909, and then in 1920 they did another exhibition at the hotel of the painter Raimundo de Madrazo y Garreta, who was also members of the Société de l'Histoire du Costume. This was just before the gift to the city of Paris. And Leloir himself is saying in the Bulletin of 1909, he said, "I would have liked to speak only of the old pieces and not of the reconstructions. One, however, is particularly interesting because the costumes executed directly from the paintings of the old masters, once the shapes and patterns are taken from the authentic pieces of the Flemish museums, were made with old fabrics and perfectly mounted." So you see, it's a bit. So for sure, this dress is in the theater department, and it is a reconstitution. Also, as we understand now, so also this fake, if I can say, these fake costumes, but which we don't have to consider as fake because they were made for a specific purpose. So they were also necessary for filling gaps in the exhibitions. They were also used for the scène de genre paintings, when they were not able to find the costumes they wanted in the costumier shop, because they were also included in all network of costumiers in Paris. There were famous costumiers who were selling costumes for theater, for masquerade, for this kind of balls. You can have also what we call the entries. So for instance, you are invited to the Duchesse Greffule and she will say, well, okay, come into Mousquetaires or Mousquetaires' wife, and you will be dressed like that, and then you will be announced, and you do the entrée as in your historical, costume. So when the painters were not able to find in the costumier the costumes they wanted for a precise scène de genre, then they will also probably have them made. And also, costumes were made for teaching historical costumes to professionals of theaters and later movies. And Leloir, in an article, which is named Pour le théâtre, for theater and movie, plus vrai, so more than genuine, the Academy of Costume, alluding, there is kind of, so he said, our costume academy with its museum from antiquity to the present day. So he was saying also fancying this costume museum as an academy of costume belonging to the city of Paris will be housed by the city in a building belonging to the hotel, to the city of Paris, well, the Hôtel de Sens. This I think never happened. In addition to the museum, there will be an abundant documentary library of books, engravings, photos, and especially clothing patterns. There will be reconstruction workshops, apprenticeship workshops where costumers and costume designers will be trained. So you can see the link between these painters and the world of the stage, from theater to movies and to Hollywood. And by the way, Maurice Leloir has been the advisor of Douglas Fairbank. So what else? That. And now we come to the intriguing case of the 5 1750-1770 straw hats. So this is a painting from Jean-Gustave Jacquet called The Yellow Dress, and we don't know where it is. We only know it has been through auction in 1911. And you can see there is a yellow dress and a straw hat. We have the yellow dress. This yellow dress has been bought by the SHC in 1909, reported as this in the Bulletin of 1910. And she is also listed in the catalogue of the auction, of the Jacquet auction of 1909, as robe Louis XV en soie bouton d'or, and that's it. And this, the dress, for what we can compare, is also corresponding to the painting. Then in 1994, we bought in auction this hat, and my colleague at that time, I was at the museum for 3 years, and my colleague was really persuaded that they were buying the hat of the painting of Gustave Jean Jacquet. But what you can see is that the ribbon is blue, and the Gustave Jean Jacquet hat, the ribbon seems to be green. And my colleagues were persuaded that this is a Jacquet hat because Maurice Leloir illustrated his chapter about hats in Histoire du Costume de l'Antiquité 1914, where you can see, he illustrates with a hat like the one they bought, my colleague bought in 1994. But they didn't see, my colleagues, that the ribbon is yellow, is reported to be yellow, not blue. And the hat has a true blue ribbon. Then there is another hat in Boston, and you can see that the ribbon is blue. There is a ribbon hanging from the hat, and there is a long straw trimming. Then there is this hat in the Nordiska Museet in Stockholm, and the ribbon indeed is green, and it looks like the yellowish green of the painting. And we have no hanging ribbon, but we have the straw trimming, which is not very long. And then the Metropolitan Museum bought also this hat, and here we have a deep green ribbon, and we have a ribbon hanging, and we also have the straw trimming. So I stop there because you see it is an intriguing study, and we really have to investigate and to study more this straw hats case, because we have 4 hats. In fact, we have 4 hats, 1 painting and 1 illustration for the moment. We never know. So to conclude, all these considerations point on essential costumes that we should have in mind when we study a costume. You know, when I arrived in Galliera, I arrived in 91, so for 10 years, the principal question was, what is the date of the costume? Then 10 years after, you know, in the 2000s, the question was, what is used for? Who wore this kind of costume? And now we are, you know, 33 years later. My question is, why have this costume survived till us? Then for me, the key is now why. And this why may be a key to a better understanding of the objects and their materiality. Because in the present case, we know that those items survive because they have been collected by painters for their studio. And for sure, we know that now it's well known. So these painters played then a key role in the collectioning of the 18th costume. And as a matter of fact, they probably have been the first collectors. So it's thanks to them that we have, thanks to painters and actors, that we have able to have all this collection. But then, why these painters selected these items amongst probably hundreds? Because, you know, our painters are 19th century painters, so they were very near the 18th century. So probably there was some kind of thread, you know, in their culture and their education, who led them to choose these costumes. So probably, this is my hypothesis, because they were linked to their styling. The costumes they chose were linked to their styling 18th aesthetic generated and stimulated by the passion for the Enlightenment, developed during the second half of the 19th century, as we all know. And this aesthetic was stimulated by a passion for some 18th century painters. And it is a story without a word. You see, the painting La Finette of Jean-Antoine Watteau and the painting from Jean-Gustave Jacquet, once more with our red dress, same position. And we can see clearly that the painting from Jacquet is alluding to the painting from Watteau. Amongst the painters, I'm not going to say all the painters because it's going to be a long story, but amongst the 18th century painters that have deeply influenced our historic genre painters and our Gustave Jean Jacquet, there is of course Jean-François de Troyes, and we can recognize, you know, the in the composition, in the gesture, you can recognize the influence. Of course, François Boucher for the garments, for the stays, for the little ribbons, for the hats, the straw hats, for the you know, these landscapes, all these affairs, nice affairs. You know, in this all this nature with nice rocks, and you can see that the ladies like that. You know, you can see easily the filiation. This is really without a word. I mean, does Jacquet collected this costume because of the painting or not? For the moment, we don't know. But, well, the question is open. Of course, Fragonard, and also here you can see it's very clear with of course with the garment, the straw hat, the yellow dress, the little rochet around the neck. Also the faces, which are very 18th century faces, quite round with a little lips, you know, and the eyebrow very well drawn. So you can feel the filiation. And chiefly, we must not forget the influence of the 18th century pastelist, so Rosalba Carriera and Jean-Baptiste Perronneau. And again, it is a story without a word, and you can see that even, you know, the movement of the neck, the gestures are nearly the same. So to end, for museums which have this kind of collection, I mean, issued from painters, but there are also a lot of collections which are 18th century collection, which are been given by actors like the Kunstmuseum one in Den Haag. So it might mean for us that we are fronted to witnesses of a styling 18th fashion story. And I say story because we don't know. I mean, at this point, I don't know if I can say that these costumes are really representing the 18th fashion history per se. And then I thank you.
For questions?
I have a question.
I have a microphone for you.
Okay. This is a beautiful presentation.
Thank
And
you.
I love complexity. And this is the essence of complexity. And it shows the paucity of today, where a sweatshirt is everybody's best friend. And when you go to Dubai and Abu Dhabi and some of these other countries, and you see the complexity of their eye and the beauty of the objects that they put on the walls, put in their houses, create other furniture, create a lot of the clothes that they wear, it is really uplifting. And I think that it would be really exciting if we would start teaching complexity again rather than sweatshirts.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Hi, I have a very specific question actually. In the painting that was, I think, Minuet, in the description, it talks about how it's showing the flower of aristocracy. Was that an example of him using actual people who were known, or or were they talking about the flower of 18th century aristocracy, or were these 19th century figures that were recognizable that were used in that painting?
That's a very good question. I don't know.
Okay.
Because it can be interpreted as the aristocracy or the upper class, of the 19th century has posed for him, but it can be also an allusion to the. I understand that it is a 19th one because otherwise, I think the context of the sentence would have been different. But that's a good question. And then who posed? So there is a lot to be researched about this painting. And now the one of the idea, because this is part of a project we want to develop at Sorbonne University and at the Centre André Chastel. And one of the idea will be to trace in the magazines, Commedia, La Vie Moderne, l'Illustration, and to try to trace all these painters to have an idea of their sociability. Of course, they knew each other. They were neighbors. They were living in the same area in Paris. They were, they were exhibiting in the same place. They were going to the same mundane festivity. We have a report of I don't remember who was buried. It was kind of big, one of these big events of somebody was dead, and they were all at the mass at the church for this. So that would be now interesting to trace and first to find then sociability, and also to find if there are reports of this lady has been depicted by it, or at the salon Mrs. was portrayed by this is a research to do.
Hi. Wonderful talk. I have a question about, I think it was a caraco or casaquin, maybe a white color that was, you had it in the paintings and then it was mounted on a dress form earlier in the talk. And in the painting, basically this is a question about how these were maybe altered or worn improperly. No, much earlier than that, not a full dress.
I can see
that, Yes. So here, thank you so much, Summer. So you can see in the painting on the right, obviously the painter or whoever was wearing it was not necessarily wearing it correctly. So I was wondering if you had personal insight onto that, and if this is because you can see there's much more bust room and even waist room in the image on the right, whereas on the left, this is for a very tiny person and with very little, bust to waist ratio is pretty straight there. So I just had a question about that, and if you had looked at that and thought about that, and if any decisions about the size were going into it, because obviously with these 18th century garments, sometimes it is hard to tell whether they were worn open with a stomacher or worn closed. So
I don't know if I understood properly your question, but yes, this is the Kazakh we have. So we have the front. So we and it fits properly like this. So for the painting, I don't know what happened. I mean, maybe indeed for the painting you can see that there is a kind of stomacher and it is there are strings. So maybe it did something for, I don't know, but the jacket is it is not it is what I said is it's rather good Kazakh. It has not been altered so much. It is it has some kind of some stitches, but it's okay. For the 18th century anyway, when 60% of the costume is good, you are very pleased. So I for us it is, this piece is not a problem. But I agree that it has been shown differently and what happened meanwhile.
thank you.
Hi, thank you. It was a wonderful talk. My question is regarding where the painters obtained the garments. I had no idea that they had such large collections, and I'm wondering, do you have any idea if these came from flea markets or from just grand houses, or what the provenance was?
I think a lot of different provenance are possible, but we have a lot of stamps in these costumes coming from the SHC, and we have a lot of stamp of well-known costumiers, so stamp from Morin, Courtois, Lepers, that were well-known costumiers on the place of Paris, and you can find also these stamps in some theater or opera costumes that are preserved in the Bibliothèque Nationale de l'Opéra. So I think this is also a topic that has to be explored, the links between the costumier and the painters, and I think also they could they probably lent their costumes, because they were all it was a network. So probably if I would say, Leloir wanted a costume 18th century like this and this and this, and yes, not, maybe he would have asked a costumier, maybe he would have asked Gustave Jacquet or Edouard Détail or François Flameng, would you have this, can you lend it to me, and maybe afterwards he will not have, if he will forgot to give it. Also, we have, I don't know if I have this at the end of my presentation, but let's see. I'm sorry, I'm doing this again. They had the use, collectors had, so you see, well, that's an interesting story. They had the use as the textiles collector did to part the textiles. This is how now you can have, from a part of a textiles in New York, a part of in Washington, and then another one in Paris in the Art Decorative, because they split the things and take this. So this dress you see here is preserved in the Germanische National Museum in Nuremberg, dated in this place of the end of the 16th century, and has been conservated. And the cost of the conservation, I know from the colleagues, have been an awful cost. And we have, so they have also the sleeves. And What else? We have this in our collection, and the corsage itself is fake. We have the sleeves, and for us, it is dated on end of 19th century, beginning of 20th century, and obviously it is a fake. So it is said in the inventory book Paire de manches ancienne, satin broché Louis XIII. It is nothing is said about the jacket itself, the corsage. But it doesn't mean anything because in the inventory book, sometimes they say Louis XV and it's a theater costume. It's completely, for theater, it's completely fancy. So you cannot trust when they say Louis XIII, Louis XVI, whatever. But anyway, if it is Louis XIII, the datation is different from the Germanische National one. And here you see there is a detail. So on the top, it is a detail of the Germanisch National Museum gown, and down it is ours. So our sleeves, but also the dress, have been through discussion with colleagues from the Société, and the colleagues agreed that there is a big datation problem in the Germanisches Museum, but that's life. And so you see these costumes were, they were circulating like this, and also the idea of, it was not an idea of doing fake. Now I use the term fake because when I say fake, I understand that it is something not 18th at all. But at that time, it was not considered as fake. It was that it is missing, and we need to tell the story of the 18th century costume. We need to paint it. We need to talk about it. So let's do it very carefully, looking for the exact textiles, for the good threads. I use really wonderful linen threads. So we need to do this perfectly because we have to respect the history. And for us, of course, it's a problem because we have to look at the costumes differently. But this is why it is so thrilling. And there was another questions at the bottom.
The home of so much of this, La Galerie, and The Devil Wears Prada. The finale of that film brings the heroine just to the steps of the Galerie. Did the film make the institution much more popular among tourists and visitors, etc.?
Did the film
le film Le Diable porte Prada,
yes.
a fini avec les marches de la Galerie, and Mademoiselle Meryl Streep was entering it and then turned around and her cohort threw her phone in the great fountain in front. Did this make the Galerie at all? Manifestly, in your case, it did not. Sorry.
I don't understand the relationship.
Okay, plus tard.
But yes, we can discuss later.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Maybe it's my English, which is not so fluent and for understanding.
Yeah, I'm interested when you have a painter and he has a red dress. I mean, we know the dress might not have been red. Where you match what is in the painting and then you say this is the piece. I mean, very often they painted for whatever the color they wanted.
Yes, that's true. But we have the dress, so this is why we know it's red.
Yeah. So you. Okay.
But it could have. Maybe you see, yes, you're right in saying, but maybe this dress has been depicted in other paintings of Jacquet, or in another color. But well, for the moment, we are at this point that.
I just wanted to say I love the way you trace the evolution of the questions you're asking in your museum about the objects that you are holding. And I love the question of why is this thing even here? I mean, that's what we have to ask about every object that's in every museum. And, we so often don't. And this makes me just think about this concept of complexity, because I think the power of this topic is you're showing that it is, regardless of what it says about the 18th century, it says a great deal about the various changing conceptions of the 18th century, different parts of the 19th century, in different circles. So really, to understand this stuff, you do have to pay attention to all those other parts of the inventories, what paintings they had, what sets of engravings they had, what books did they have, what were their reference tools. So I wanted to ask you just a simple question. Did Jacquet and the other Leloir, did they collect these 18th century paintings as well as garments? And then part two is, I'm just a little bit fascinated and repelled by the paintings that they made, I have to be honest. I guess the Art Institute is also repelled because they deaccession it. But looking at these things, I'm sort of wondering, what are these paintings of? I mean, do you think those painters thought they were really painting the 18th century in a true way, or were they painting some kind of contemporary restaging of the 18th century as it would have happened not just on stage but in parties? Or how do we evoke that the world in which the 18th century garden party or the fête galante or the whatever's happening in the street, like how is that being relived in 1880, 1890, 1900? How can we put all of these things back into that story?
So first, yes, they collected paintings, 18th century paintings, engravings, and we know this. We have the for Jacquet, for instance, we have the catalog of the auction of his painting. He sold his collection in 1904, so we can see what. No, he have little masters. Yeah, more from what I remember of the auction, he has Daubigny and but Daubigny I don't know, but he had lesser masters. For Leloir I don't know, but I can't say because there is no auction, so I don't know through an auction catalog for Leloir. But because of his family, with he's of a huge painting family. Signac, the painter Signac, is from Leloir family, so he must have had, of course, he must have had paintings, drawings, and things. There is a very important collection of Leloir items and drawings in the Musée de Guéret, which is in the center of France, and all of this must be investigate too. And for your other question is, did they know there were fencing? Yes, of course. I think there were. They knew, of course. I mean, probably they knew. When you read the compte rendu about their work, they are saying that the masters, they are compared to Watteau, they are compared to Lancret. Sometimes they are also very much criticized. Jacquet, I've been through very hard criticized sometimes, because at the salon it was reported to be academic painter. We didn't know very much about the figures. We were, the same critics as the 18th. When, for instance, Rosselin was criticized because he was said to pay more attention to the silks than to the figures, to the faces, for instance. So they also have had the same critics. What is really astonishing is that these painters, they're old as the Légion d'honneur. Some of them, Edouard de Taille, for instance, who have been also a war painter. So Edouard de Taille and Flameng, they went in the trenches in the 1914 war. They made a lot of paintings. They were kind of painter, reporter. So they ended Commandeur de la Légion d'honneur. In the collection of the English kings, there are paintings from Edouard de Taille. They have prestigious order. For instance, François Flameng, I didn't talk about François Flameng, but François Flameng, Gervex, Toulouse, which is from the family of Leloir. They made paintings for the Opéra Comique. They made paintings in a lot of French institutions, in state institutions. So they were really well known, and collected even by State Museum. And suddenly the State Museum realized that Picasso, Monet, Manet, Van Gogh, Picasso were there. So they didn't. We don't do accession in France, but what they did is to send all these painters in the little museums in Provence. What we say that in Paris. Well, I'm not from Paris, so in Paris they say Provence. So you can find this kind of paintings, but not in Bordeaux or Lyon, in Tarbes, in Agen, in Carcassonne, in the little cities, So in this place, suddenly you will have a wonderful Antoine Caro, or you would have this kind of paintings, but when you go to the Musée d'Orsay in the documentation, you can find a lot of documentation. But when you say to the colleague, where are the painting? Even Charles Chaplin, who was a really neo-Pompadour, well-known neo-Pompadour painting collected by Eugénie de Montijo, by the Empress. So even Charles Chaplin, I think in Orsay, they have one painting, two drawings. Charles Chaplin evaporated, maybe, somewhere in Guéret or in a little city. And this even not maybe, inventoried in the national database. You have to look everywhere for these paintings. And for the moment in France, it is not. It is. We have specialists like Michael Votero. I think Michael Votero. So we have some specialists of academic. These academic painters, but not such a lot. They have been mostly collected, I think, in England and in the United States. So probably most of these paintings we know just through the auctions are in your country, not in France. And but there is really a link between these painters till Hollywood. That's for sure, because they have the paintings have inspired the first costumier for stages, but after that for the movie. And maybe there is also a link to Walt Disney. It's kind of Walt Disney thing when you think of Cinderella, with the white blonde hair and all these ladies. There is something kitsch, something Walt Disney.
Merci, Pascal. I wanted to ask you a question about more to veer towards the political and the social aspects of this fashion for the 18th century and the relationship between the paintings and the dresses. And first, I was wondering if there is a political aspect for these painters. I mean, you cannot not notice the names of the people that are part of the SHC. You have the Gausset-Brissac. You have the big families. We are at a moment where the Republic is not really stable, where the monarchists are still very strong in France and still supporting the Bourbon and the Orléans. And I was wondering if among these families supporting the Costume Institute, do they have their own costumes that they have kept in the family? Do we have examples of family heirlooms that they would have kept and they use for their own entertainment, that they use for their tableaux vivants, for their costume balls that they do at home in their castles, etc. And what is the relation? Basically, I wanted to ask you, what is the relationship between this type of painting, this type of balls, this nostalgia for the 18th century, and the political background in France at this moment, and the power of these aristocratic families, who most of them are anti-refusards, monarchists, etc.?
This is a good question, and I've not been through this research for the moment, so I can't answer, properly to you. But it's a good question, and I think that the families, the aristocratic families, they have costumes the 18th century, some families, I mean, maybe not the aristocrat, but they have their family costume tracing on dating on the 18th century that they, of course they will use. You can also see this with there is two catalog, the Versailles Revival one, and there is also a catalog by the Musée Lambinet, and you can see that all the Robert de Montesquieu, this 18th century style hotel, big houses, and it was, but it is a feeling. It's also a feeling because if I cannot say for France that I have the family, the collection, the lady in the 18th century dress coming from her own family, and maybe the Gustave Jacquet painting. This I cannot do for France. But for Netherlands, for instance, the colleagues in the Rijksmuseum and in the Kunstmuseum of Den Haag, they have the photo of the family, bourgeois family, or even nobility, because they have some aristocratic family in Netherlands anyway. So they have the family, the lady with the dress of the families, and the dress, the photo and the dress have been given to the Kunstmuseum, so they can say this, and also they have the actors with the collection of 18th century, and they are posing, and so you can say in other country you can trace. So I think in France it should be the same, but it is also a huge, it's also a research in itself. And then of course it has nothing to do with the sociability in Paris at the end of the 19th century and the social context, and the 18th century was of course more pro-monarchy, and yes, it has to do, but this also should be investigated with sources and texts, and also going through the literature, because for the moment I'm just on the side of the paintings and the costumes, but there is also a step where it would be useful to go to the press, which was to see, and also to go through novels. I'm afraid Proust, because it's very long to read Proust, but to go through all these novels, which are also describing ladies and men in 18th century costume. Was it the question?
You finished with? Oh.
If I am finished, yes,
I have a question. Thank you so much, Pascale, for giving us a refreshing way to look at the costume collections. I'm interested in the relationship between this historicizing genre painting, the collection of costumes, and this early stage of costume history, especially in Leloir's case. I wonder if you can elaborate a little bit on this interrelationship, and related to that is the particular sense of time. Where Leloir, especially his mother was a fashion illustrator, so you have this contemporary fashion and historical costumes, and this precise the timeline of fashion history, but also this fantasy painting and fantasize the 18th century time, which also combined with other periods. So I wonder if you can talk a little bit more about this conception of time and also the costume history in this period.
I don't know if I can talk about the conception of time. That's a difficult question. I haven't read from these painters' consideration about how they consider the chronology, and I don't know. I don't know if it was for them, all the same level, because when you see La Bienvenue. It's all on the or the minuet. It's all on the same level, so they were mixing. But if you they are mixing chronology. But if you look at Watteau, is mixing costumes who did exist, costume will never exist, and costumes which are half existing, half not existing, you know, half fancy, half not. So I think they are in this kind of phantasmagory, 18th styling, 18th phantasm. This is what I think for the moment. Maybe in 10 years, after having faded in researchers, I will say, no, I was wrong. This is now what we have, because I have some sources that I will, but for the moment, I think they are in this world, and they are also encouraged in this academic way of looking at the society, as underlined Basile by the network, by the political maybe ideas or not. I don't know, but yes. And also their education, because they all went through Cabanel. Not only Cabanel, but Meissonier the father, the Cabanel, Bougreau. So they stayed in the Salon des Artistes Français. They really was in the mold. In the mold, we will say dans le moule, like that. Yes.
Any other questions?
Well, just that this is the period of the 18th century revival, Rococo revival, the great houses in Newport. These paintings fit right in with the furniture, with the taste of the period.
Absolutely.
And as you said, novels. I'm thinking of Henri de Régnier, Le Passé Vivant, where there's a character who only dresses in 18th century clothes, even though it's in a modern times.
Yes,
So
well,
I think this was quite
they styled an 18th century story at that time. So yes. And it lasted till the 50s, in fact, the 1950s, because the 18th century, there is constantly revival of the 18th century. In the 1910, it is very pregnant, in the 1920 a bit, and it comes again after the war. And it's a way of seeing the new look as a revival of the 18th century. But indeed, we have some robe à la française that has been altered in the 1950s or 1960s, like that, and with a very small bust. And these are we know this by studying the piece, but we also know this because for mannequining, putting this dress on a mannequin, as well as for dresses which had been through these paintings, if you do what you think would be a proper 18th century mannequin with a hoop and the head like that and the stay, and it doesn't work at all. It is awful, absolutely awful. If you think, when I am working with a registrar, and for this kind of dress, for the one which have been collected in the 1950, which had been altered, if you say, please prepare a mannequin, a new look one. I want a new look mannequin, and we will put that dress on, and then perfect. And the same for some dresses, which you don't understand how it works. It is ugly, and then you are suddenly say, okay, if I try to be historically 18th century adequate, we say proper, then it will never work. It is absolutely ugly. So let's do a breast and this part. Let's do the 1890 figure. And then we put again the dress or the caraco on this figure, and then it works. So it's fantastic. So when I was just arrived, and when I was young in the field, I would never dare to do this. It's 18th. I have to be stuck with 18th. And now we are freer with the colleague of the registrar department, and we are really exchanging a lot. And what if we do this kind of figure of this period, and we try and say, oh, this is okay. So this means that it has been altered at this period, because it has been altered for a lady who had this figure. Thank you. Thank you.